Hey BookTube friends, welcome back to my channel. Let's wrap this thing up. So today I want to talk about 3 books that I finished in the last couple of weeks. I am outside, as you can see, and ironically 2 of the books that I read were set in the woods. But that's not why I'm outside. I'm outside because my husband works shift work, and so he's asleep right now, so I'm trying not to disturb him. The first book I want to talk about is one I finished last week, and that is Confederacy of Dunces by John Kennedy Toole. This is a Pulitzer Prize winning book that I read as part of a humorous book club that I'm a part of on Voxer. And our main character is named Ignatius Riley. He's 30 years old. He has a college education, but he is unemployed and lives with his mother. The best way that I can describe Ignatius is that he is a very likable, unlikable character. He has a very inflated sense of self, and I really enjoyed his manner of speaking. He speaks in a very dignified, almost professorial type of way, but that is in stark contrast to his very outlandish and immature behavior. We follow Ignatius as he is finally forced to get a job, and he goes through a series of jobs. We meet a lot of very interesting characters along the way, and the story is set in New Orleans, so that gave it a very rich atmosphere, and you get a lot of kind of flavor added to the book because you are in the French Quarter for a lot of it. If you read this book, though, I wouldn't expect a lot of personal growth from Ignatius. He definitely thinks a lot of the work that he takes on is beneath him. He talks down to some people. He gets himself into some interesting situations. And, you know, he wears a Mickey Mouse watch, for crying out loud. And just to give an example, when he gets a job as a hot dog vendor, he actually eats more of the hot dogs than he sells. I listened to this book as an audiobook, and I really feel like the narrator enhanced my reading experience because he did such a wonderful job with the accents and really committed to performing those characters. However, I do feel a little bit cheated because the version that I listened to was an abridged version. However, this did make me want to purchase the unabridged version, and this is something I will definitely revisit. One of the people in the group actually brought up the fact that the author of this book committed suicide, and this book wasn't actually published until I think 10 years after Toole's death. Knowing that about the author did kind of color how I saw the book from that point on. So knowing that the author struggled with mental health, it did give me pause and make me look at Ignatius and his behavior through a different lens. The fact that Ignatius is unemployed, the fact that he spends most of his time alone in his bedroom, you know, those are things that could be reflective of mental illness. So it just added a little bit of a dark layer to this book, but it was very comedic, very funny, and well worth it. The second book I want to talk about is one I actually finished yesterday, and this was phenomenal. It's called Be Not Far From Me by Mindy McGinnis, and this is a young adult survival story. Our main character's name is Ashley, and she is a poor girl growing up in Tennessee. She has a knack for survival skills, and she's also a star cross-country athlete. And that's kind of her ticket out of her small town because she has earned a college scholarship to run, which is great because that's probably the only way she would be able to go to college. So the story starts out with a camping party in the forest just off the Appalachian Trail. A drunken Ashley stumbles out of her tent to use the restroom, and she discovers her boyfriend is cheating on her. Like drunken adolescents often do, Ashley proceeds to make some very poor choices that will literally toss her into a life or death situation. Ashley's emotions are sent in a tailspin. She just takes off running. She falls, she mangles her foot pretty badly, and she ends up being lost. The isolation and introspection that was featured in this book was very well done. I find a lot of young adult fiction seems superficial to me. This did not. It had very real emotions, very real choices and consequences and situations, and I just felt like it was authentic. Some of the scenarios obviously are maybe a little hard to believe, but I was very invested in this character, and it was a page turner for me. It was probably one of the best young adult pieces of fiction I've read in a long time. There's also a neat moment in this book where you see the significance of the title revealed, and I always love when that happens, and I like how that was incorporated into this book. There were parts of this book that were pretty graphic and pretty gross, and there were some, I felt, a little bit unnecessary descriptions of bodily functions that I could have done without, but that is personal preference. For some people that may not be a problem at all. The book also incorporates real life issues that we see in Appalachia, things like the opioid crisis and also poverty. The ending of this book was absolutely phenomenal. I just kind of closed the book and sat there for a few minutes. I don't want to tell you too much because I do think this is worth a read. Even if you're someone who is not interested in young adult fiction, this is a great one. The last book I want to talk about is The Forest of Stolen Girls by June Her. And this book is a young adult historical murder mystery. The cover is pretty gorgeous, which is one of the reasons why I picked it up, but it is set in 15th century Korea. We follow our main character, Hwani, and apparently when Hwani was a young girl, there was an incident that happened in the forest with her and her sister that involved a masked man. It involved finding a dead girl's body, and Hwani's father, as an inspector, wants to solve the case of these missing girls, but he's also trying to connect these missing girls to the incident that happened to Hwani and her sister as young children. Hwani's father goes missing though, and so she follows in his footsteps to try to find him and also to try to solve these mysteries. The premise of this book was really good, and it did have an interesting setting. At one point, we are on the island of Jeju, which is a Korean island that features a pretty unique group of women called the Haenyeo. And I'd read about the Haenyeo in another book called The Island of Sea Women by Lisa C. I would recommend that book because that book did a really great job of incorporating the history of the Haenyeo into the book. The Haenyeo are essentially free divers, and these are women that support their families by diving, and these women have adapted to extreme temperatures and extreme depths, and I think they're a very interesting group of people. This book didn't do a great job of kind of capitalizing on that or even some of the historical elements. I feel like it was missing something. It wasn't very suspenseful in my mind. It wasn't super eerie or scary. There's even a shaman involved, but I feel like that wasn't even capitalized on. It wasn't a terrible book, but it just didn't do it for me, especially in contrast to the book I just talked about, which really captivated my attention. This one was just okay. So I'm still reading the Gulag Archipelago, and today at 2:30 Eastern Time, Christy Lewis over at Dostoevsky in Space is hosting a Gulag Springs event, and if you're interested, you should check it out. I will link it in the description box. Hopefully I will be a part of that if my internet cooperates, and I just hope I don't make a fool of myself because I've never been part of a live event. So should be fun because some awesome people are involved, and I'm really enjoying that read. I'm also still reading Marilyn Monroe, The Final Years with Sandy over at Miss Reads a Lot, and that is going really well. I'm excited to talk about that with her, even though the book is a little bit disappointing in some respects. I have been enjoying all of my read-alongs that I am a part of. So I hope everyone is having a great weekend, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.